everybody, it's the War Hipster here, coming at you with another Contrast Plus painting tutorial, and today we are painting the Infernal Master of the Thousand Sons. Yes, the model from the Hexfire box set. It's a very cool model. It's very, very striking. It's got a hell of a pose, and it's just, well, it's a real centerpiece for any Thousand Sons armor, apart from, you know, Magnus Red, which we'll get to one day, but today we're doing the Infernal Master. So, without further ado, we can get in and start painting him. He's been primed with Grey Seer, and the first place we're going to work on is all of his armor. Now, the colour we're going to be using for this first is Akhelian Green. And basically what we want to do is just want to load up our brush like this, and then we just want to start painting this all over his armor, like this. Now, I just want to be very kind of smooth and consistent here by just gliding across the surface of the model with our brush, taking each section as it comes, and making sure we've got the right amount of paint on our brush. You've got too much if you've got a drip forming, you don't have enough if it looks dry. Basically want around about that much on your brush as you do this. And yeah, we just want to go all over the armor. Now, there are certain parts on the armor which are going to be yellow and certain parts that are going to be white. Now for this, I recommend you check out the box art for which ones are which, to make sure you're getting them in the right places. You can see I'm just taking it very steady here, taking each section as it comes. It doesn't matter too much if I get any of this on areas like the trim. We'll be going over that with a metallic. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter to get this anywhere else at this stage. You can always go back and neaten it up with Grey Seer, particularly if you place this on a section that is going to be yellow or white, for example. But yes, as I say, just check out the box art to make sure you're placing it in the right places. So with that Akhelian Green applied all the way around the model, like so, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some Iyanden Yellow, and we're going to use this to paint in those bits of the model that we've left on the armor. So like down here we've got the sun rays, like that, and like that. Got the stripes and things going across his chest as well. Like so. And then we've also got the areas up here on his headdress. So with that done, you should have an Infernal Master that looks somewhat like this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on. Before we do any highlights, we're going to do those all a little bit later. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on doing some of the, well, a lot more of the base coats. And the place we're going to move on to is the cloak. And the colour we're going to be making is a roughly 3 parts Volupus Pink to 1 part Shyish Purple. And what we want to do is we want to paint this all over the outside of the cloak. Now the cloak starts on this side around about there, like that. And then what you want to do is you just want to use these big broad brush strokes like I'm doing here to glide across the surface of the cloak once again, just like with the armour, to get a nice smooth finish all over it, just like this. So with that done, you should have a cloak that looks somewhat like this. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to completely change the tone of it by taking some Volupus Pink on our brush. And we're just going to paint this over the top. Like that. And this immediately gives us the dark pink tone that we're after for our Thousand Sons cloaks. So with that done, you should have a cloak that looks something like this. Don't worry if it's a little bit wet for now, because what we are going to do is move on. And the colour we're going to be using is Skeleton Horde, and this is for the inside of the cloak. So what we want to do, just want to navigate our brush in here like this, and then just start painting this Skeleton Horde all over the inside of the cloak. So that Skeleton Horde applied to that cloak. Again, don't worry that it's still drying, because we are going to move on now and we're going to paint in some of the other details. And the first colour we're going to use is Black Templar. I'm going to use this for all of the black details. So this is going to include all the soft details, all the soft joints in the armour. Like that. So with that applied, what I've also done is I've coloured in the kind of ribbed parts of the horns on the helmet, and I've also done the ribbed cables here on the back of the backpack. So what we're going to do now is once again move on, and the colour we're going to be using is Cygor Brown. We're going to be using this for all of his leather details. So he's got his gun holster down there. He's got this little pouch here on his belt, you can see. And he's also got the soft wrap on the stave as well. You don't need to use tons of Cygor Brown. To do the job. So just be careful with how much you have on your brush. You really only want small amounts at a time. And with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some Apothecary White, and we're going to use it in 2 places. The first is up here on the scarab device. There, like that. And the other is on the tabard. So with that done, don't worry that it's still drying, because what we're going to do is going to move on as per usual. And the next colour we're going to use is Runelord Brass. Now we're going to be using this for all of the gold, well, brassy gold areas. And we're going to be using it on all of them, but don't worry, we are going to be creating some variation in them after this stage. We just want to use Runelord Brass first as a kind of base coat for all of them, and then we're going to create that difference between the two. So, the place to start is on all of the areas like the trim and things, like for example here, on the shoulder pad. I'd strongly recommend that you check out the box art as you do this. There is an awful lot of gold on these guys. So just take your time now as well, because we're going around lots of lovely details that we've already base coated. Basically, the majority of him is gold. There is a fair bit of silver on there as well. So with that Runelord Brass applied, what we are going to do now is we're going to create a little bit of distinction, just a couple of areas to make them a little bit brighter. And the colour we're going to be using is Liberator Gold. And I know it seems weird to be doing it now because we could just do it in the highlight stage, but what we want them to do is we want them to have a slightly different tone from when we come to shade them. Now, what we want to do is we want to use this Liberator Gold all over the top of the flat areas on the shoulder pad. Like that. Don't want to do it on the textured bits. Just want to put it there like that. Just create that little tiny distinction between the Runelord Brass and the Liberator Gold. Similarly, on the staff, what we want to do is we want to colour in over the top of the kind of frame here, just leaving that inner bit there, like that. And then we also want to colour in the star device. Like so. Like that. And then similarly over here, we want to use this Liberator Gold over the top of the kind of, well, I guess you'd call them like the cauldrons, whatever these things are. Like that sort of thing. So we just want to go around like this. Oh, the other thing we want to do is we want to use this on the eye there in the middle, and also on the eye here. Like that, same on both sides. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down iron hand steel. We're going to use this to paint in all of our silver details. So this is going to include the haft of the staff, like so. It's also going to include the kind of scale mail down here on his tabard. Like that. And what we're also going to do is we're going to do it over this phylactery type thing, just here on his belt. We've got the kind of connectors here holding up various items on his belt. And then we've also got the decorative features and the bolt pistol itself down here. And the kind of vents and things on the backpack as well. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to work on the hex fire, the magic that is floating around him. And we're going to be using two colours to do this. The first one is going to be a roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part warp lightning mix, and the other is going to be Aethermatic Blue just on its own. So the first thing we do is we take that warp lightning mix, and we're just going to start by painting this on. I'm going to quickly do this up here, like that. It's quite thin, so you just want to be careful not having too much on your brush, but really what we're looking for is just to kind of stain it green, just like we've done there. Just like that. Similarly, on the larger one, what we do is we just paint this all over. Like that. We will do it on the other side, but whilst it's still wet, all we do is we wash the brush and then we grab a tiny amount of Aethermatic Blue. We want to add this over the top, just in certain sections. So like I'm adding it towards this end like that, and I'm going to add some towards this end as well. Like I said, you just need a small amount of Aethermatic Blue because all of that contrast medium is mixed with the warp lightning. It's going to be nice and thin anyway, so we don't need to thin it down too much because Aethermatic Blue is quite a thin paint. Like that. And you just keep going until you're happy with it, really. So what we're going to do now is just do it on the back part as well. Just like this. Like that. Then we grab that Aethermatic Blue. And just add it in. So with that done, what we're now going to do is going to work on the flames on his back, and we're going to be using 3 colours for this. We're going to be using Iyanden Yellow, Blood Angels Red, and Black Templar. So what we want to do is we want to start with the Iyanden Yellow. And we just want to coat this all over our flame. Just like that. And we will do it on the back as well. I'm just going to focus on the front just so we can get the method down. Then what we do is we wash the brush and grab some Blood Angels Red. And just over the top whilst it's still wet, starting from the tip, we want to add this Blood Angels Red like that to around about there, like so. Then we wash the brush. Then we grab some Black Templar, and then we put it over the top of the tip of the flame, like that, going around about halfway. Then what we do is we wash the brush, grab some Iyanden Yellow, and we use this to just blend those colours together. Like that. And you can just add extra colours as you see fit. So for example, I'm going to add a little bit more Black Templar here. Like that. I'm pretty happy with that. So what we're going to do now is just move on and do the back and do the other one as well. So with that done, we are just a few short base coats away from being able to add some shades and then some highlights. But what we are going to do is we're just going to quickly work on these screamers, I think they are, of Tzeentch. Now what I forgot to do was to do the same green energy of them appearing on here. So I've just added that just before we've done this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use some Ultramarines Blue. Now we're going to add this all over the screamer. But when we get towards that kind of, those green energy tails, what we want to do is feather that out. So we just start by getting this Ultramarines Blue all over, like this. Going up towards where that green is, like so. Like that. Then what we do is we wash the brush, and just where those two colours meet, so where that Ultramarines Blue is, just want to feather that out just a little bit, just kind of smooth out that transition to that already dried green. Like that. Just always do it with a clean brush. Like so. And obviously you want to do this on the underside, and we want to do it on a slightly smaller one as well. We've got a little bit of this screamer just here as well that we need to add this Ultramarines Blue over the top of. And next up, just whilst we wait for that to dry, what we're going to do is we're going to grab some Basilicanum Grey. I'm going to paint it all over this bird icon on the knee. Like that. And what we're also going to do is going to use this Basilicanum Grey to shade the mechanical areas on the backpack. So with that done, now what we do is we take some Leviadon Blue, and much like when we were doing the Ultramarines Blue, what we want to do is we want to apply this Leviadon Blue over the kind of middle area of the screamers up until where the kind of the scales end, like this. Similarly on the other side. We want to bring it right up like this. Like that. And then what we do is we wash the brush, and then with a clean brush we just feather it where the colours meet to just soften out that transition just a little bit, like that. And so with that done, what we then want to do is we want to take some Black Templar. We want to use this to paint in the beak down here. like that, as well as the tusks on the horrors. Horrors? Screamers. Just like that. Doesn't matter that it's still wet. Black Templar covers in nicely. So with that done, it's now time to add a few shades to the model. And the first one we're going to use is Magos Purple. I'm going to be using this on all of the silver. Now don't worry, because we are going to re-brighten up the silver after this. So we just want to paint this over the top. Like this. As I said, don't worry if it completely changes the properties, because it will do. So we're coming straight out the pot here. We are going to brighten it back up in just a moment. The only part we're not going to do it is on that phylactery. Just there. So we're just going to ignore that one for now. But all the rest of the silver that we haven't done with Basilicanum Grey. And so with that Magos Purple applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to create a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Contrast Medium and Darkoath Flesh. I'm going to use this to shade all of our gold, including that Runelord Brass and Liberator Gold. What you'll see is you'll get two very slightly different tones out of it. That's exactly what we want. Just like this. So with that done, our Infernal Master is at what I would call a War Hipster battle ready. However, we're not going to leave it there. We are going to take it to the next level by adding some highlights. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go right back to the beginning and we're going to start with the armor. Now the color we're going to be using first is Temple Guard Blue. We're going to be using this, as I said, all over our Akhelian Green armor parts. And basically what we want to do, so you just want to start picking out all of the edges. With the Temple Guard Blue. Just like this. And there's not tons of blue edges because a lot of it is covered over with the trim. But we do just want to go around all of the ones that we can see, like so. And if you're feeling really brave, what you can do is on some of the larger pieces, what you can do is you can add an edge highlight that goes around the inside of the trim. Just like that. Just add a little bit of shine to those internal armor panels. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Fenrisian Grey. I'm going to use this as a little spot highlight around the armor. So what we want to do is we want to, for example, here on the gorget or on the chest piece, we want to add some of this Fenrisian Grey going across the middle. like that, just to make it look nice and sharp and shiny. Similarly, we want to do this on any rivets, any sharp corners, anywhere that you really want to draw the eye to. So for example, here on that foot, add it going along here, so the light really just catches off of the foot. And so with that done, our armor is now, well, the blue section now finished. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take some Phalanx Yellow. We want to be very careful here. And we're going to use this to highlight all of our yellow details on the armor. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to highlight all of the gold. And the colour we're going to be using for this is Canoptek Alloy. And all we want to do is we just want to start doing an edge highlight. Like this, around all of the gold. And this is going to be the same for the areas that we did with Liberator Gold, as well as Runelord Brass. So with that done, gold's not quite finished. We do have one last highlight to do, but what we are going to do is we're going to just work on the silver, because the final highlight for the gold is the same as the final highlight for the silver. Now the colour that we're going to be using is Iron Hand Steel. We're going to be using this basically to just brighten back up the silver, leaving that Magos Purple shading in the deepest recesses. So we'll take our Iron Hand Steel on our brush, and for example here on the stave, what we want to do is we just want to start painting this Iron Hand Steel all over it to around about there. And at that point we want to turn it into an edge highlight, so it starts to kind of fade into the purple towards the bottom, like so. Similarly up here, smooth that out just a bit, like that. What we can do is we can use this Iron Hand Steel to now highlight all the other silver details that we shaded with Basilicanum Grey, just to kind of make them nice and bright once again. Add that little bit of shine and that little spot for them to really twinkle at you. But yeah, we basically want to go around like this. So similarly again, we'll do it up here. Add the Iron Hand Steel across the middle of it like that. Then we just turn it into an edge highlight the closer we get. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to make sure that that purple is still showing in those deepest parts, like that. So with that done, as you can see, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Stormhost Silver. I'm going to use this as a spot highlight on all of our metallics. What we're also going to do is for any of the gems, for example, the large eye up here, we're going to fill them in. It's got the large one just there on the staff. We've got the smaller one in here. Like so. But what we also want to do, add this as a little spot highlight to the sharpest parts on all the gold and all the silver. But what we can do, for example, here on the staff, just to make it look extra shiny, we can just highlight silver like that. Like so. So you just want to go around picking out all of these areas. For example, we've got quite a good one here. Top of his knee pads. Like that. And we can just bring it down just a little bit. Like so. You can pick out things like the rivets as well. So with that done, all of our metallics are now finished and they look absolutely fantastic. So what we're going to do now is going to take some thinned down Corax White. We're going to use this to highlight all of our white details. Now there's a couple of different ways that we're going to do this. So firstly, on this white kind of device here, what we want to do is basically want to relayer it to be a nice bright white, and we just want to avoid the recessed design. It's very tricky, very fiddly. Like that, just leaving that Apothecary White shading in the recess. What we also want to do is we want to use this to highlight our tabard. And again, in many ways it's kind of similar to a relayer because the edges are quite large. Just like this. And lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to use this Corax White to pick out the sharpest points in all of our magical energy as well. Like this. Like that. We have one more highlight I should mention. We want to highlight the skull of the bird device down here, but not the beak. You want to highlight the beak. And with that done, what we now want to do is we want to take some thinned down Dawnstone. We want to use this to highlight all of our black details. So areas such as the beak, just there like that. And we've got the ribbing here. Like that. We've also got the horns. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is going to take some Mournfang Brown. I'm going to use this to highlight his brown leather details. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to move on to finishing off the cloak. Now the first colour we're going to be using is Pink Horror. I'm going to be using this to highlight the outside of the cloak. And all we want to do is just want to pick out all of the edges. We want this to be a nice subtle highlight. picking out all the sharpest parts. And with that done, what we now want to do is we want to take some Cadian Fleshtone and apply this as a little spot highlight to the sharpest points. Just like that. So with that done, the outside of the cloak is now finished and it looks pretty boss. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to quickly layer up the inside of the cloak, and the colour we're going to be using for this is Screaming Skull. Now what do we want to do? Just want to very carefully now add a layer of the Screaming Skull over the top of where we've applied that skeleton horde. Like so. What we can do is just avoid any of the deepest recesses where that shade has settled. So for example, this large fold here, this can get re-layered. Like that. And then we skip over onto the next one, which is that one right down there. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some Terradon Turquoise. I'm going to use this in two places. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint this Terradon Turquoise over top of that phylactery. Down there. Like that. Just like that. And what we're also going to do, I'm going to use this Terradon Turquoise over the top of his eye lenses. And with that done, we then want to take some Blood Angels Red. I want to apply this over the top of the two scarab beetles. So one here on his chest, and the one on the top of his headdress. Like that. And then what we also want to do is use this Blood Angels Red on the eyes of the Screamer. And so with that done, what we then want to do is take some Gryph Charger Grey. We want to use this on the larger gems. So we got this one here. And we've got this one on the back. Like that. And then we also want to put it over this one in the middle, like so, and this one down here as well. So with that done, what we now want to do is we want to take some Ghost Blaster Green. I want to use this to highlight the gem in the middle by just drawing a line going across the center of that kind of eye. like that. And then we also want to use this to draw a little line on the eye lenses as well. And next up, we want to use a tiny amount of Wyldwood. We want to use this on the larger red gems. But what we want to do is we want to colour in the tops of them to just add a little bit of extra shading to them. Like that. And with that done, we then want to take some Fire Dragon Bright and we want to add a little highlight on those red gems. In the bottom right corner. Just like this. And then finally, for all of those gems, what we want to do is we want to take some Corax White. We want to very carefully add this as a little reflective dot. Well, so for some. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to take some Corax White, we're going to add a little dot of it right in the middle. Of the gem on his chest. Like that. On the eyes, what we want to do is we want to add a little dot of it in the top right corner, well, the furthest corner from the middle of his eye, like that. And on the staff gem, which we haven't done anything extra to, we want to add a highlight along the top left corner. With that done, we've just got one last thing left to do, and that is to add a tiny amount of Yriel Yellow. It's a little highlight to each of our eyes on the screamer. Like that. As well as to add some little highlights to the sharpest points in the flames. So here we are then, the Infernal Master is now painted, and all that's left to do is his base. And now we're going to be doing this in the same style as the Arcane Wasteland bases that I've done a video for here on YouTube. However, I thought I'd demonstrate what I'm going to do on the rocks to just blend it into the Arcane Wasteland style as well. Now, just like we did with the Arcane Wasteland bases, we're going to be using three colours. We're going to be using Aethermatic Blue, Akhelian Green, and Terradon Turquoise. We're going to be using them all at the same time. And what we want to do is we want to start with Aethermatic Blue. And we're going to paint this pretty much over most of the base. So including on the negative space and on the soil and on the rocks. Like this. Just getting it all over a certain section. So we're just going to do, I think, as much as that. There, like that. Is the Aethermatic Blue. Then we're going to wash the brush, grab some Akhelian Green, and we're going to start adding this in here as well. Like that. And then we're going to wash the brush one more time. Just mop up that little bit of excess, it's a little too much there. Clean the brush again. And then we're going to grab some Terradon Turquoise. I'm going to do the same thing again, only we're going to go over the top of that Akhelian Green. And we're going to move it around, being careful when we get close to the model. Add some of it in there, like that. And we're just going to keep moving it forwards, like this. Again, just a little too much there on that section. to say. And mostly, once we've done that, we then go back to Aethermatic Blue and we continue on. Again, just kind of blending out from that Terradon Turquoise all over the base. So with that done, you should have a base that looks somewhat like this. What we're now going to do is we're going to darken it right down. The colour we're going to make is a roughly 2 parts contrast medium to 1 part black Templar mix. I'm going to paint this all over the rocks. Like this. And as you can see, it just darkens it right down, whilst also just retaining the properties of the paint underneath, just that little bit slightly, so it becomes kind of like a tinted magical black. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to add some Mordant Earth to the flat of the base. Now Mordant Earth is a crackle paint, so the more we put on, the thicker we put it on, the bigger the crackles. What we want it to do is basically crackle and reveal the kind of swirling arcane energies that we've painted on there with the contrast paints. And like I said, the more you put on, the thicker the coat, the bigger the crackles. And the thinner, the smaller. So with that done, as you can see, we've got some really nice crackle effects going on around those negative spaces in the base. So what we want to do now is just want to seal it down. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some Lahmian Medium straight out the pot. We're just going to paint this over the top of all of that crackle paint, just like this, just to make sure that when we come to do any dry brushing or any additional things to it, it doesn't just all come apart under any pressure. And the Lahmian Medium just helps us with that, by just adding that little bit of extra protection. As I said, adds a nice little seal to all of that crackle. And so with that done, all of that is now sealed nicely, so it won't now kick up when we do a bunch of dry brushing, which is what we're going to do now. And the colour we're going to be dry brushing first is Sotek Green. You want to very gently dry brush this over the entire of the base, including all of our rocks and our crackles. We're just being really careful here. With that Sotek Green and dry brush applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to do an even lighter dry brush of Baharroth Blue. So here he is then, the Infernal Master of the Thousand Sons is now finished, and boy what a model, what a colour scheme, what a final result. I think he looks absolutely cracking. I'm really pleased with this, and I think all of that practice with the Celestial Vindicators definitely prepared me for doing the Thousand Sons, and I'm very happy with the result. I think that cape in particular looks absolutely cracking, and all that armour. Oh, I just really love this model.
If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Alternatively, you can now become a YouTube channel member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, just like these absolute bosses have done. And if you just want to shoot me a little thanks, just because you really love this video, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.